Victoria's perfectly manicured nails drummed against the mahogany conference table as we waited for Dad's lawyer to begin the will reading. Her red-bottomed Louboutins tapped an impatient rhythm on the floor, a sound I'd grown painfully familiar with over the past 5 years since she'd married my father. "I don't know why we even need this formal reading," she announced to the room. "Charles was very clear about his wishes. Everything goes to his beloved wife. I'm Elizabeth Warner, 30 years old. And until 2 weeks ago, when my father Charles passed away unexpectedly, I'd been trying to maintain peace with my stepmother for Dad's sake. Now, watching her barely contain her glee at this somber occasion, I wondered why I'd bothered. Mrs. Warner, Mr. Peterson, Dad's longtime lawyer and friend, cleared his throat. We should wait for everyone to arrive before." "Everyone is here," Victoria interrupted. "It's just Elizabeth and me. Though why she's even here." She threw me a dismissive glance. I remained silent, thinking about my last conversation with Dad 3 months ago. He'd seemed distracted, almost nervous, insisting we meet at his office instead of at home where Victoria might overhear. "Lizzie," he'd said, using my childhood nickname, "remember what I always taught you about patience? The best surprises come to those who wait." I'd repeated dutifully, the same words he'd used throughout my childhood. He'd smiled mysteriously, and to those who know where to look. Now, sitting in Mr. Peterson's office, those words echoed in my mind. Victoria was still talking, listing all her plans for Dad's technology company, Warner Innovations, and his considerable fortune. "The company needs a modern touch," she was saying. "All this focus on research and development, on giving back to the community, it's outdated. We need to streamline, maximize profits." The door opened, and several people walked in. I recognized James Chen, Dad's chief technology officer, along with Dr. Sarah Mitchell from the RD department and Marcus Wong from the charitable foundation Dad had established. Victoria's smile faltered slightly. "What are they doing here?" she demanded. Mr. Peterson adjusted his glasses. "They're here at Charles's specific request. Now, if everyone would please be seated, we can begin." He walked to a large screen at the end of the room and picked up a remote. Victoria's eyes narrowed. "What's this? I thought we were reading a will." "Charles left a video will," Mr. Peterson explained. He was quite insistent about it being played exactly 3 weeks after his passing, with everyone in this room present. Victoria's perfectly arranged features showed the first hint of uncertainty. But he already told me." The screen flickered to life, and suddenly there was Dad, sitting in his home office. He looked tired but determined, his silver hair slightly mussed as if he'd been running his hands through it, a habit he had when solving complex problems. "If you're watching this," he began, "then I'm no longer with you. I hope my timing was right, and this is being played exactly 3 weeks after my passing. Victoria, I'm sure you've spent those weeks making plans for my company and my fortune. I'm also sure you've told everyone who would listen that I left everything to you." Victoria sat up straighter, a triumphant smile starting to form. "But you see, my dear," Dad continued, his voice taking on an edge I'd never heard before, "that's not exactly true. In fact, it's not true at all." The smile froze on Victoria's face. "When you married me 5 years ago, I wanted to believe you loved me for who I was, not what I owned, but I'm a scientist at heart, and I believe in data, so I started collecting it." Dad reached off screen and pulled out a thick folder. "This contains every conversation you've had with investment bankers about selling off our RD division once you got control, every email you sent about dismantling the charitable foundation, every secret meeting with competitors about selling our patents." Victoria's face had gone pale. I saw James and Sarah exchange knowing looks. "You see," Dad continued, "while you thought you were investigating my company for your takeover plans, my team was investigating you. James, Sarah, Marcus, thank you for your help in documenting everything. And Lizzie, my brilliant daughter, thank you for your patience. I know these past 5 years haven't been easy." Tears welled in my eyes as Dad smiled at the camera. "Now, to the actual distribution of my estate. Victoria, you will receive exactly what was specified in our prenuptial agreement. The amount you so reluctantly agreed to, thinking you'd find a way around it later. $1 million. No more, no less." "That's impossible." Victoria shot to her feet. You changed that. You signed new papers. Ah yes. Dad's image smiled sadly. Those papers you had me sign while I was recovering from that mysterious illness last year? The illness that coincidentally caused symptoms similar to heavy metal poisoning? Mr. Peterson, please play Exhibit A. The video switched to footage from what appeared to be a hidden camera in Dad's home office. It showed Victoria mixing something into his coffee, then later presenting him with documents while his hands shook so badly he could barely hold the pen. I had my blood tested regularly. Dad's voice continued over the footage. The poison wasn't fatal. You were too clever for that. Just enough to make me seem confused, susceptible to suggestion. Unfortunately for you, I only pretended to drink that coffee after the first time. Victoria had collapsed back into her chair, her designer outfit suddenly seeming like a cheap costume. The papers you had me sign? Dad reappeared on screen. Completely fake. My real will, properly witnessed and notarized, is quite different. Mr. Peterson? The lawyer stood up. Warner Innovations will be restructured as follows. 51% of shares go to Elizabeth, who will serve as CEO. The remaining shares will be distributed among a trust controlled by James Chen, Sarah Mitchell, and Marcus Wong, ensuring the company continues its mission of innovation and community service. You can't do this. Victoria's voice had risen to a shriek. I'll contest it. Those videos are fake. Contest away. Dad's image said calmly. Along with this video I've left extensive evidence of your attempts to poison me and defraud the company. The choice is yours. Accept the prenup payment and walk away, or face criminal charges. Mr. Peterson has all the documentation ready for either outcome. I watched as my stepmother seemed to deflate, her carefully maintained facade crumbling. She looked around the room, perhaps hoping to find an ally, but found only cold stares. There's more, Dad continued. My personal fortune, separate from the company, amounts to approximately $40 million. This will be distributed as follows. $10 million to the Charitable Foundation, specifically for STEM education programs in underserved communities. $10 million to the RD Department's Renewable Energy Project. James, Sarah, I expect great things from that work. He paused, his eyes seeming to find mine through the screen. The remaining $20 million goes to my daughter Elizabeth. With one condition. She must use part of it to fulfill the dream she's kept secret all these years. I gasped softly. How had he known? Yes, Lizzie, he smiled. I found your plans for the Technology Education Center for young girls. The one you never told me about because Victoria always said it was a waste of money to educate people who would just get married and quit anyway. I want you to build it. Show the world that Warner women are forces to be reckoned with. The tears were flowing freely now, but I didn't care. And Victoria? Dad's voice hardened. The next time you decide to marry a wealthy man, do try to check whether his daughter has a degree in chemistry before you attempt poison as a manipulation tactic. Elizabeth figured out what you were doing after the first dose, which is why she insisted on making Dad's coffee herself every morning. Victoria's head whipped around to stare at me. I met her gaze steadily. Did you really think I wouldn't protect him? I asked quietly. Did you really think I wouldn't notice the symptoms of thallium poisoning, after spending years working with chemical compounds? This concludes the official will reading, Mr. Peterson announced. Victoria, you have 24 hours to decide whether to accept the prenup payment or face criminal charges. She fled the room, Louboutins clicking rapidly down the hall. After the door closed, there was a moment of stunned silence before James spoke up. That, he said with feeling, was the most satisfying will reading I've ever attended. The next few weeks were a blur of activity. Victoria, unsurprisingly, took the prenup payment and disappeared to parts unknown. The company transition was smooth. Dad had apparently been preparing the team for this change for months. The Technology Education Center became my primary focus. Dad was right. It had been a dream of mine for years. Ever since I noticed how few girls were in my advanced science classes. The plans had been ready for months, just waiting for funding. 6 months after the will reading, we opened the Charles Warner Center for Technology Education. The first class of 50 young girls walked through the doors, their eyes wide with excitement as they saw the state-of-the-art labs and equipment. Your father would be proud, Sarah said, watching as a 12-year-old girl successfully coded her first computer program. He knew, I replied softly. He always knew exactly what everyone needed. He gave the company the protection it needed, the foundation the support it needed, and me, the confidence you needed. She finished. By the way, have you seen the latest article about Victoria? She handed me her tablet, showing a Society page article. Victoria had apparently tried her same scheme with another wealthy widower, not realizing he was a friend of Dad's who had been warned in advance. The article showed her being led away in handcuffs, her designer outfit somewhat less pristine than usual. Some people never learn, I mused, handing back the tablet. Speaking of learning, how's the renewable energy project going? Sarah's eyes lit up. We've had a breakthrough. With the funding from your father's will, we've developed a new type of solar cell that's twice as efficient as anything currently on the market. We're calling it the Warner cell. Dad would have loved that. He always said true innovation comes from freedom to explore, to fail, to try again. Victoria had never understood that. She saw the company as a cash machine, not realizing its real value lay in the dreams it helped build. 1 year after Dad's passing, I stood in his old office, now mine, looking out over the company he'd built. The R&D department had 3 new patents pending. The charitable foundation had funded STEM programs in over 50 schools. And downstairs, another class of young girls was learning that they could be anything they wanted to be. On my desk sat a framed photo of Dad in his lab, from his early days as an inventor. Next to it stood a small plaque with his favorite saying, "The best surprises come to those who wait, and to those who know where to look." He'd taught me well. I had waited patiently through Victoria's schemes, watched carefully for evidence, and protected what mattered most. Now, standing in this office, I could almost hear his voice. "Well done, Lizzie, well done." The company flourished under the new structure. James, Sarah, and Marcus proved to be excellent partners, each bringing their own strengths to the board. We expanded the R&D department, launched new products, and maintained Dad's commitment to ethical innovation. The education center grew as well. We added programs for middle school and high school girls, created mentorship opportunities, and established scholarships for college-bound students. Each success story felt like a tribute to Dad's legacy. Victoria, I heard, had moved to Florida after her failed attempt to snare another wealthy husband. Sometimes she sends emails, usually late at night, alternating between apologies and threats. I don't respond. The security footage of her poisoning attempts remains safely stored with Mr. Peterson, a silent guardian against any future schemes. Last week, during a board meeting, James made an interesting observation. "You know," he said, "Charles didn't just leave us money and shares. He left us a master class in strategic thinking." He was right. Dad had seen the threat Victoria posed not just to his wealth, but to everything he'd spent his life building. Rather than confront her directly, he had gathered evidence, positioned his pieces, and ensured that justice would be served even after he was gone. The video wasn't just about distributing his fortune. It was his final lesson to all of us, about patience, about vigilance, about protecting what matters, and about making sure the right people end up with the right resources to do the most good. Today, as I watch another group of young girls learn about science and technology, I think about legacy. Victoria thought Dad's fortune was his legacy. She never understood that his real legacy was in the lives he touched, the innovations he sparked, and the dreams he helped build. The best surprise, it turns out, wasn't the money or even the satisfaction of seeing Victoria's schemes exposed. It was discovering that Dad had known me, known all of us, better than we knew ourselves. He had seen what we could become and made sure we had everything we needed to get there. That, more than any dollar amount, was his true fortune, and it's one that grows larger every day, with every patent filed, every student taught, and every life improved through the work we continue in his name. Not bad for a man whose wife thought she could fool him with poison in his coffee. Not bad at all.